When I was a little kid, there was a hit song called The Ten Commandments of Love. My next guest has written The 10 Rules of Hate for a new book he's putting together in serialized form. You probably know his writing. Matt Taibbi has been a contributing editor and writer for Rolling Stone for some time. He is winner of the 2008 National Magazine Award for columns and commentary. He's the author of a number of books. His most recent book is I Can't Breathe, A Killing on Bay Street, about the Eric Garner killing, and other books included Saying Clown President and The Divide, and he joins us now. So first of all, Matt, thanks for coming on the program.
Oh, thank you, Richard, for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure, and I really wanted to make sure that as many people as possible know about Hate Incorporated, which is your new serialized, I will let you describe it, but I would describe it, a new book being released in serialized form about the mainstream media.
Yeah, I was approached by a new startup company last year called Substack to do some writing, and a lot of my sort of writer heroes growing up had done serial novels or serial books, people like Raymond Chandler. So I thought it would be interesting to try to do a serialized book online. It's going to eventually come out in physical book form also later this year. But for now, it's a book that I'm writing in chapters basically once a week. And it comes out at taibbi.substack.com, and it's been kind of cool, actually. I mean, it's hard as a writer to keep up enough pace to do it, but it's been fun.
Well, before we get into the substance of the book, I would think, well, and you mentioned writers who've written in serialized form, Dickens,
Right.
Victor
Much
Hugo,
better.
right?
Yeah.
So you're in good company. But I would think from the point of view of the discipline of writing a book that while it's pressure, it's also great because, when you're working on a book project, a long project, there's such deferral of gratification, like 18 months or whatever, that at least you're getting your stuff seen as you produce it. That must help you keep going.
Yeah, and I think also being a journalist, I'm used to sort of releasing things all the time and deadlines. It's a big part of writing for me. So I've always had that problem with books that you work and work, and there's not the immediacy that you usually have. And some people actually, I think, need deadlines in order to do well. I might actually be one of those people. So it's been fun. It's different for sure. I mean, because one of the things that happens with books is that you obsess over things and constantly change them and go back and tinker, and you can't do that. Here, once you've done the chapter and you put it out there, it's out there. So it's a different dynamic, but it's interesting, and I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and you're getting your Pavlovian little cookie in the cage once a week instead of. But the other piece of it, it's a subscription model. Some chapters are publicly available, some chapters are not. So hopefully that helps finance the process as well in an era when journalism is, for many people, dwindling in terms of income opportunities. It's also maybe Substack and things like it are an interesting model. But let's talk about the book itself. Hate Incorporated is, as I understand it from your writing about it, and in it originally started as an update of manufacturing consent by Chomsky and Herman, and it kind of became something else. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been interested in for a long time, and sort of what would happen if you went back and tried to write manufacturing consent now in the internet era, when the landscape is so fundamentally different, especially financially. There's so many things that are different about the media from back in the 80s when Chomsky and Herman were writing that sort of great critique about American propaganda. So I wanted to sort of do this sort of clinical academic sort of look at the media, but when I started writing it, I found that all these sort of frustrations about having worked in the business for 30 years started pouring out, and it became much more about something else, really about the financial pressures that we have in the business, to sort of train our audiences in a way that's to be divisive and to consume inflammatory and divisive content. And that's really what the book ended up being about.
You know, I made the joke a minute ago about the pellet in the cage, but it seems to me that's not a bad analogy for what you're writing about in Hate Incorporated, both the pellet that, you know, we as journalists are forced to chase, but also the pellets that the audiences are trained to seek out, the juicy story, the sensationalism, the secret conspiracy, the hate, which is, I guess, your central theme, that it's all kind of a one big feedback loop being amplified and amplified. And I'm talking about the mainstream media now, and I believe you are as well. Not fake news and that phenomenon. We're talking about a news industry that's basically an addiction mill, for lack of a better term. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I had to do a couple of stories last year about Facebook and some of the other internet platforms, and it's generally accepted now that social media has many of the features of addictive behavior, and I think the news companies have, you know, much like the tobacco companies have learned to manipulate the addictive reflex that goes on with internet surfing. And what we're really doing right now, in the same way that a cigarette is a delivery mechanism for nicotine, news stories are really about getting people a sort of a small dopamine rush that they expect to get from a certain kind of news story. And what we're doing particularly is we're aiming at particular demographics, and we're giving them news that we know that they're going to agree with, or that is going to stimulate them in a certain way. We're very rarely challenging our audiences, telling them that they're wrong about things or that the politicians they like are wrong about things. And instead, the easiest way to get people coming back for that dopamine rush is just to tell them bad news about people they don't like. And that's kind of what the business model has turned into for almost everybody. It used to be sort of exclusively on the Fox News side, but I think now it's going on everywhere.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I don't want the whole conversation with you, Matt Taibbi, to be about Russia, but I do want to address that issue, and you write about it. You recently kind of, I think, accelerated the release of one of your chapters because of, or parts of it because of BuzzFeed's thing about the Mueller investigation. I find one of the things that I found, I thought I was past discouragement. You know, I thought that I had developed a sufficiently chitinous exoskeleton to disappointment with erstwhile, you know, allies and so on. But I have been disappointed quite a bit in the last 3 years or so by the speed with which, in my mind, the democratic, liberal, whatever you want to call it, media and media consumer ecosystem has just glommed on to the Russia story with the same kind of search for a dopamine hit that used to be the Fox News purview. And that doesn't mean, before everybody flames me online or whatever, that doesn't mean that they're morally equivalent in any way, every way, or that the policies are just as bad as Trump. I'm just specifically talking about the dopamine rush. I think there's a reason why MSNBC pushes the Russia story so heavily, and I don't think it's just because they're, you know, people call them the Democratic Pravda. Wait, that was me. But anyway, I don't think it's so much that the political party establishment is asking them to do that, because I think the Democratic political consultants know that doesn't necessarily help them as much as, you know, mixing it up a little bit might. I think it's just that from a media perspective, that audience, which considers itself so above the Fox News cohort, just loves this story because they can imagine that tomorrow they'll discover that Donald Trump is a murderer, you know, hired prostitutes to, you know, defile a bed because the former president slept in it, or whatever it might be. And so, for example, our media, anti-Trump media, don't even pursue other worthy lines of questioning, like Trump's financial connections to Saudi Arabia, for example, because other stories don't carry the same electric juice that Russia does. So I've been discouraged into thinking that the so-called liberal media are just as addicted to that dopamine you mentioned as the other side of this supposed other side of the spectrum. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. This has been a very difficult period for me, kind of as a reporter during this Russia story, among other things, because I lived in Russia for 11 years and everybody expects me to be an expert on this topic and sort of at the forefront of the story. But I found it to be very sloppily reported. And I think one of the things that you're talking about, the sort of constant emphasis on Russia at channels like MSNBC, this is the perfect news story for a commercial news organization because it has the immediacy. Basically, there's the structure of the story tells viewers that they have to keep tuning in. They have to keep checking, not just once a day, not just once an hour, but really every minute, because at any minute you could get one of those boom or bombshell stories. And they're creating the expectation that Trump at any moment could be dragged out of the White House in handcuffs, even though even that tiny corner of the story is so erroneous. This idea that the walls are closing in and that this is the beginning of the end. Even if Trump were guilty of everything that they're alleging, the process simply politically does not favor him leaving office anytime soon. In fact, he's incentivized really to stay president as long as possible. And so I think the reporting has been emotionally preying on a lot of people. They know that people are psychologically damaged by Trump's election and that they're desperate to get him out by any means possible. And so they keep dangling this psychological carrot in front of their viewers saying, tune in tomorrow and just maybe you'll find out that we've got the final answer and we've got him this time. And they keep doing this over and over and over again. And one of the consequences is that reporters are so incentivized to get these scoops is they keep missing and they keep doing stories that have to be retracted or walked back. And I think it's been a catastrophe for the business, that story, because it's undermined our credibility in a huge way.
And I had somebody say to me, and I thought this was a defining moment with a certain edge of hostility to it. I had somebody say to me, well, they were talking about how much they're excited they are about this story. And they said, oh, but I know you're a Russia skeptic. And my answer was, I'm an everything skeptic.
Exactly.
It's the gig, right? I mean, it's like you're skeptical, and just because a government official says it doesn't make it true. As anyone who's been a veteran of following peace demonstrations or any kind of dissent knows over time. But I feel guilty. I don't want to take all the time talking about Russia. I do want to talk about Hate Incorporated a little bit. You have your 10 rules of hate. You have, what do people need to know about Hate Incorporated in order to go check it out, I guess would be.
Well, first of all, you can find it at taibbi.substack.com. But it's a series of chapters, and it's basically kind of an insider's guide to a lot of the tricks of the trade that we reporters use to kind of wind you up. And again, a lot of this is about the business model. This is all about what are we doing to make money? Because one of the first things that people forget when they turn on the news is they think that journalism is like a public service, that we're doing this for some profound ethical reason. That's part of the motivation for people, especially the people who are doing it. But it's a business first and foremost, and so we're selling you a product, and so people have to remember when they turn on the news or click on an article that they're consuming a consumer product, and they don't think enough, I don't think, about what that product is. What are we selling? What are we trying to get you to do? And really, the object of the game is to hold your attention long enough for an advertiser to reach your eyeballs, or for you to pay some kind of subscription. And what's the easiest way to do that? Well, we've found over the years, because of so especially in the cable news era, the 24-hour news cycle, that people will stay tuned in when they are angry, when they are engaged psychologically in an argument. That arguing is the cheapest kind of action that we can show on television. If we could show police chases or forest fires all the time, we would. But the easiest thing to do is just to put two people on screen and have them bark at each other all day long. What doesn't sell is reconciliation, or working things out, and so we show you a lot of the one and none of the other. And this is something that I'm just trying to get people to pay attention to when they read the news, to understand that we're creating certain psychological expectations for a reason, for a financial reason.
Well, and I think it is important for people to know that. And I think your new book, your new project, gives a lot of great concrete examples of that, because I think the best way for people to understand that is to be shown how it works in practice. And I think you do a great job of that. So I encourage people to check it out, as I encourage people to check out your other writing as well. So Matt Taibbi, author, journalist, and producer of, I don't know what to call it until it's a book, the new serialized book, Hate Incorporated. Thanks for the great work, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Take care now.
You too.